Good evening, America. Two things happened today that have never happened before in this war, and they happened on the same day within hours of each other. First, Iran bombed Kuwait International Airport, a civilian airport, a passenger terminal that ordinary people, families, travelers, and workers pass through every single day. Iranian drones heavily damaged the terminal building, killed one person, wounded dozens, and forced Kuwait to shut down its entire airport. Fire burned inside the terminal. Debris covered the floor. Flights were suspended. And Kuwait, one of America's closest Gulf Arab allies, expelled 2 Iranian diplomats and gave them 24 hours to leave the country. That happened this morning. And then, while the smoke was still rising from Kuwait's airport terminal, something happened in Washington that has never happened before since this war began on February 28. The United States House of Representatives passed a war powers resolution to end Trump's war with Iran. The vote was 215 to 208. 4 Republicans broke from their own party and voted with Democrats to tell the President of the United States that this war, now entering its 96th day, must stop. Tonight, we are going to tell you everything about both of those historic events, what they mean together, and why today may be remembered as the day this war changed permanently. Stay with me, because today is the most important single day of this entire conflict. Let us start with Kuwait International Airport, because the images coming out of Kuwait City this morning should be front-page news across America and deserve the full attention they have not yet received. Iranian drones struck Kuwait International Airport in the early hours of Wednesday morning. The attack hit the main passenger terminal, Terminal 1, causing what Kuwaiti officials described as significant material damage. A massive fire burned inside the terminal. Video posted on social media showed flames and debris in what is normally a busy civilian travel hub. Emergency teams responded immediately. Kuwait's Directorate General of Civil Aviation implemented emergency plans and suspended all flights in and out of Kuwait International Airport. 1 person was killed. Dozens were wounded. And unnamed diplomatic missions in Kuwait also sustained damage from the attacks. Kuwait's foreign ministry issued a statement condemning what it called the brutal and ongoing Iranian attacks by ballistic missiles and drones, the latest of which targeted civilian and vital facilities, including Kuwait International Airport. The ministry said Kuwait reserved its full and inherent right to take appropriate measures in response to these sinful and repeated Iranian attacks. Within hours, Kuwait summoned Iran's charge d'affaires to the foreign ministry and expelled 2 Iranian diplomats, declaring them persona non grata and giving them 24 hours to leave Kuwaiti soil. That is a formal diplomatic rupture. Kuwait is not a country that makes such decisions lightly. It is one of the most cautious and diplomatically careful nations in the Gulf. And it just threw Iran's diplomats out of the country. But here is what Iran said about the airport attack, and it reveals something deeply important about the state of this conflict. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps claimed that it was not a Kuwaiti airport that was hit. The IRGC said the damage at Kuwait International Airport was caused by a failed American Patriot missile interceptor, not by Iranian drones at all. They said American air defense systems misfired and the debris fell on the airport terminal. The United States military responded to that claim with complete directness. The U.S. military said flatly that Iran's claims were false and that Iran struck the civilian airport with drones in what it described as a deliberate, calculated, and unjustified attack. Deliberate, calculated, unjustified. Those are not the words a military uses to describe an accidental incident. Those are the words a military uses to describe a war crime. And now let us put the Kuwait airport attack in its full context, because it did not happen in isolation. It happened as part of a rapidly escalating series of attacks and counterattacks in the Gulf that tell you exactly how close this war is to spiraling beyond anyone's ability to control. In the hours before the airport strike, the United States military said it fired a Hellfire missile to disable a Botswana-flagged oil tanker that was heading toward Iran's Karg Island, the hub through which most of Iran's oil flows into global markets. America disabled an oil tanker to prevent it from reaching Iran. Iran responded by striking Kuwait's civilian airport. The U.S. military then struck targets on Iran's Qashem Island. Iran fired back at American bases in Kuwait and Bahrain. And through all of this, the ceasefire that Secretary of State Marco Rubio said this week was over is somehow still being described by both governments as technically in effect. Rubio said the war is over. Trump told reporters in the Oval Office on Wednesday afternoon that there is a reason for everything, adding that we hit them pretty hard the night before and actually last night, and that he believed they nipped it in the bud pretty quickly. The war that is over, according to the Secretary of State, produced American strikes on Iran last night, Iranian strikes on a civilian airport this morning, one person killed, dozens wounded, and an airport shut down. That is what the end of this war looks like today. Bahrain was also struck overnight. Iran launched drones and missiles at Bahrain as part of the same wave of attacks that hit Kuwait. Saudi Arabia intercepted drones fired toward its territory. The UAE condemned the Iranian attacks. The foreign ministers of Saudi Arabia and Jordan also issued condemnations. The Saudi Crown Prince's private office posted on social media asking God to protect the people of Kuwait and Bahrain and safeguard the Gulf from all evil. Multiple Gulf states that have been trying to stay out of this conflict directly were struck or threatened last night. Iran is no longer limiting its attacks to American military targets. Iran is now striking civilian aviation infrastructure in countries that have not even been at war with Tehran. And here's something that adds an entirely new dimension to the Kuwait airport attack that most coverage is missing. Iran also struck an island where China is helping to build a port. The IRGC targeted a Kuwaiti island that is the site of a Chinese infrastructure project. China's reaction to Iranian strikes on Chinese-linked infrastructure has not yet been fully reported, but the implications are significant. China has been a major buyer of Iranian oil throughout this conflict, helping Tehran survive the American economic blockade. If Iran is now striking Chinese-linked projects in Kuwait, the relationship between Beijing and Tehran is about to become considerably more complicated. Now let us turn to Washington, because what happened in Congress today is historic, and every American citizen needs to understand exactly what it means and what it does not mean. The United States House of Representatives passed a war powers resolution by a vote of 215 to 208. 4 Republicans crossed the aisle and voted with all Democrats to pass this measure. Those 4 Republicans were Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania, Thomas Massie of Kentucky, Tom Barrett of Michigan, and Warren Davidson of Ohio. They are not fringe members. They are serious legislators with real constituencies who looked at 96 days of war, at Kuwait's airport burning this morning, at the economic pain their constituents are feeling at the gas pump, at the constitutional question of a president waging a war Congress never authorized, and they said enough. The resolution directs President Trump to remove United States armed forces from hostilities with Iran unless Congress votes to declare war or explicitly authorizes the use of military force. It is the clearest, most direct congressional rebuke of this war since the first bomb was dropped on February 28. And it passed through a House of Representatives controlled by Trump's own Republican Party. This is not a small thing. Let me give you the full history so you understand just how significant today's vote is. This war powers resolution was first attempted in the House on March 5. It failed 212 to 219. Republicans held the line. Trump's war continued. Then the House tried again in late May. Republican leaders pulled the vote entirely rather than risk losing it on the floor. They sent members home early for Memorial Day recess to avoid the embarrassment of a public defeat. Then it came back today, and this time it passed. 215 to 208. 4 Republicans, it only took 4, broke ranks and changed American history. The war is now 100 days old this Saturday. And the Republican-controlled House of Representatives has just told the President of the United States that it does not authorize this war. But here is what you also need to know, and this is where the honest analysis gets complicated. The resolution is largely symbolic. It cannot by itself force Trump to stop fighting. Even if the Senate passes a similar resolution, Trump would almost certainly veto it. The White House responded to today's vote by noting that several GOP lawmakers were absent and that previous similar efforts had failed. House Speaker Mike Johnson called the vote total BS. Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Brian Mast said it was just a total BS vote. The administration has questioned the constitutionality of the War Powers Act itself, arguing the president has inherent authority as commander-in-chief to conduct military operations without congressional authorization. So the war will not end tomorrow because of today's House vote. Trump will not stop the strikes on Iran tonight because 215 members of the House told him to. But here's what today's vote does do that matters enormously. It demonstrates that the political coalition supporting this war is fracturing in public on the record with named votes attached to the names of specific elected officials. It shows that the war's domestic political cost is rising with every passing week. It gives the Senate Democratic effort to pass their own version of the War Powers Resolution new momentum and new bipartisan credibility. And it tells every leader in every country watching this conflict that the American government is not unified behind this war, that the president is fighting it over the explicit objection of a majority of the people's elected representatives in the House. The resolution's sponsor, Representative Gregory Meeks of New York, said this after the vote, following repeated attempts to get sycophants in the Republican-controlled House to join us, House Democrats successfully passed our War Powers Resolution today to stand up for the American people and hold Donald Trump accountable. Those are sharp words. And they represent a democratic institution asserting itself in a way that will reverberate through this conflict for the remainder of its duration. Now let us bring the Lebanon dimension into tonight's full picture, because the Lebanon situation continues to deteriorate and is directly connected to everything else that happened today. Iranian Foreign Minister Araghchi wrote directly on social media yesterday that the ceasefire with the United States is unequivocally a ceasefire on all fronts, including Lebanon, and that violation on one front is a violation on all fronts. Iran is saying that Israel's strikes on Beirut and southern Lebanon are American violations of the ceasefire. America is saying it has the right to conduct defensive strikes whenever it judges a threat. And Israel is continuing its ground offensive in Lebanon regardless of what anyone else says. Netanyahu has vowed to push even deeper into Lebanon. Israeli forces are north of the Litani River. The Israeli flag is flying over Beaufort Castle. Beirut's Dahia district was ordered evacuated yesterday. And more than 3,400 Lebanese people are dead since March 2. The Lebanon situation and the Kuwait airport attack are connected in one critical way that deserves its own clear explanation tonight. Iran is escalating, not reducing, not de-escalating in response to the peace process. Iran is hitting civilian airports. Iran is hitting Bahrain. Iran is threatening American bases. Iran's supreme leader is threatening American military installations across the region. And Iran's state media said just yesterday that the ceasefire is very likely to end entirely if Israeli strikes in Lebanon persist. The ceasefire that Secretary Rubio says is already over is simultaneously the ceasefire that Iran says is being violated by American allies. And through all of this contradiction, both governments are describing a peace deal that is almost done, almost signed, almost ready for the fifth consecutive week. Here is something else that happened today that has received almost no attention, but which is genuinely alarming for the future of this war. Iran's IRGC Navy said it targeted a vessel identified as the Panaya with missiles after accusing U.S. forces of striking an Iranian tanker near the Strait of Hormuz, an oil tanker, in international waters, near the world's most critical shipping lane. Iran fired missiles at a commercial vessel because America fired a Hellfire missile at a tanker heading to Iran. Both sides are now striking commercial shipping. Both sides are firing missiles at each other's vessels in or near the Strait of Hormuz. And the memorandum of understanding that was supposed to reopen the strait and end all of this still has not been signed. The economic picture continues to worsen with each passing day. Gas prices in America are still 49% higher than before this war began. The national average was $2.98 per gallon before February 28. Even with the modest decline driven by deal optimism last week, American families are still paying dramatically more for fuel than they were 100 days ago. Every flight that diverts around the Strait of Hormuz adds cost to your airline ticket. Every ship that takes the Cape of Good Hope route instead of passing through the strait adds weeks to delivery times and hundreds of thousands of dollars in fuel costs that ultimately reach you as a consumer. The one person killed at Kuwait airport this morning is a human tragedy. The economic tragedy playing out across American households is a quieter, slower emergency that is no less real. Here is the complete picture of where we stand tonight on June 3, 2026, the 96th day of this war. Iran bombed Kuwait's civilian airport this morning, killing one and wounding dozens. The U.S. struck Iranian targets on Qasem Island in response. Iran struck U.S. bases in Kuwait and Bahrain. Kuwait expelled 2 Iranian diplomats. The U.S. House of Representatives passed a War Powers Resolution 215 to 208, the first ever to pass in this conflict, directing Trump to end the war. 4 Republicans broke with their party to pass it. Trump says the war is over while bombs are still falling. Rubio says the war is over while Iran is hitting airports. The Iran peace deal is still unsigned. The Strait of Hormuz is still under Iranian management. Lebanon is still being bombed. 3,400 Lebanese are dead. And the war that everyone agrees must end is now in its 96th day, with no end confirmed, no deal signed, and no clear path to either. America, here is my question for you tonight, and it may be the most consequential one this channel has asked. Iran bombed a civilian airport in Kuwait this morning and killed a person. Today, the U.S. House of Representatives voted 215 to 208 to tell President Trump to end this war. Trump said there is a reason for everything, and that America has been hitting Iran pretty hard. 4 Republicans voted to strip Trump of his war-making authority. Do you believe Congress was right to pass that war powers resolution today? Or do you believe Trump should have the full authority to keep fighting this war until Iran fully surrenders, even if that means more civilian airports get hit, more people die, and your gas prices stay 49% higher for the rest of the year? Drop your answer in the comments right now. This is your democracy working in real time. Subscribe and turn on notifications. This war just changed today in ways that will define what happens next. We will be here every single day,